Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to what is a super relevant session just before lunch. No to waste and yes to taste, how Unilever, our Mindshare's campaign, aims to change consumers' behaviours. I will be hosting what I know will be an excellent and brilliant conversation. So I was here yesterday and this morning, and a key theme I keep hearing from speakers and from people I chat with during the breaks is how we must direct our creativity and our strategic firepower to normalize and promote sustainable lifestyles. You know, in our industry, we are architects of desire. It is in our gift to do this and to make this happen. So this session is a real-life case study between an advertiser and an agency working together to do just that. So listen in on how to deliver on Action 5 of AdNet Zero. I'm Rob McFaul. I am co-founder of Purpose Disruptors. I lead also on our Change the Brief Alliance Sustainability Learning Program. We're an organization of ex-industry insiders awake to the climate emergency, and our mission is to catalyze the industry to transition to be in line with the IPCC's 1.5 degree global warming target. And it's been great to have much of our work that centers on measurement, education, and creativity referenced by many of the speakers over the last couple of days. And I also have a tie to Mindshare. I worked 9 years at the agency, I guess a lifetime in Adland. My last role there was in the sustainability role, a kind of new emerging type of role that we're seeing in the industry. And I also have a connection with AdNet Zero. I was part of the climate action working group that led to the development of AdNet Zero. So back when Change the Brief and AdNet Zero were just seeds of ideas, so feeling a strong connection being on stage here with you all. But let me introduce our excellent speakers. Rachel, tell us a little bit more about you and who you are and what you do.
I'm Rachel Chambers. I'm brand lead for Hellmann's in the UK at Unilever. I have about 20 years experience in marketing, and I'm a big believer in brands having a duty to drive to make sustainable choices and make a difference, and how brands with a strong purpose will really flourish. And I think Hellmann's is a great example of that.
Thank you. And Becky, tell us about you and your role at media agency Mindshare.
I'm Becky. I am the ECD at Mindshare, which means I'm responsible for creativity within the agency. But I also have the great privilege to work creatively with all of our media partners, including Channel 4 and BBC Studios, who we'll talk about today. And Change the Brief was, as you know, born at Mindshare before you took it industry-wide. So I'm very passionate about embedding those principles into our work.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, before we get deep into the conversation, let's play the case study film to give everyone here an understanding of the excellent Cook Clever, Wasteless campaign.
We think we could save you about £4,000 a year.
Globally, we waste 1.3 billion tonnes of food every year. If that was a country, it would be the third worst source of greenhouse gases on the planet.
That's a lot of waste.
And we throw away a lot of food in the UK too. That's why Hellmann's is on a mission to show British families that they really can help the planet by saying no to waste and yes to taste. We created the UK's first brand-funded sustainability TV show. Cook Clever, Wasteless was hosted by one of the nation's favourite cooks.
I'm Prue Leith, and I'm rather proud of my nickname, the Leftover Queen.
And food expert Dr. Rupi.
I have a recipe that is going to blow your mind.
It showed 4 families how much food they waste, the impact that has,
That's disgusting.
and how, by changing their cooking habits, they could save time, money, and the planet. All by planning meals carefully and using leftovers to make delicious meals. We supported the show with a brand TV ad, sponsorship idents, recipe videos, food hacks, and a downloadable recipe book. It was clear the show had an impact on those taking part, but its influence was felt far more widely too. 3.4 million people watched the show. The show generated £2.6 million worth of press coverage, and 8 in 10 people said they'd choose Hellmann's next time they buy mail. Most importantly, 32% of people who saw the show said they would act to cut their food waste.
Here's the leftovers.
Cheers.
Well, both of you, congratulations on the success of that show and the numerous award nominations you received, and of course, inaugural campaign at Net Zero Awards. Fantastic work. So, first question to you, Rachel. Tell us a little bit more about Cook Clever Wasteless. What did you want to achieve, and how successful was it in meeting your objectives?
Well, we were really pleased with the success of the show, and thanks in part to the wonderful hosts, Prue Leith and Dr. Rupi, who did an amazing job for us. We wanted to raise awareness of food waste, but we wanted to do it in a very engaging way and that would help people take action at home. So we created a show full of very practical tips and tricks and great recipes that people can really easily adopt at home. And the show was for families and people who care about the environment. And they tuned in. You heard 3.4 million viewers. And in fact, the first episode was the top performing show on Channel 4 in the day. So that was a real good result for us. 32% of people said they'd go on to use more leftovers after watching the show as well. So we feel it really kind of drove behaviour change, which we're very proud of. And I think working with the experts in entertainment, so Channel 4 and BBC Studios, helped us really engage with the audience in a very different way than advertising alone would have. So a real privilege to do that.
Yeah, and a real privilege to work on something so rewarding as well, just from a personal point of view, seeing families, making a real difference for families. We briefly saw Daniela in there, who was in episode 2, I think, and they reduced their food waste by 92% and therefore saved a lot of money as well. So it's just very rewarding to see that and to imagine that families around the UK are doing the same thing.
I'm sure it is, knowing that the work you've done is actually creating genuine positive change with that family and with potentially millions of other households who engaged with the work. Question for you, Rachel. So, can you tell us a bit more about Hellmann's food waste mission? Why are you tackling food waste, and why is it so important for Hellmann's and Unilever to have a mission like this?
Well, food waste, it's a massive problem globally, but equally in the UK. 70% happens at home, so I'm afraid we all are guilty. And, it's busy lifestyles and a change in routine that, means perfectly good food ends up in the bin. So it's a huge problem. And the consequences are it's wasted money for us, which is particularly important today, and also it's harmful for the environment. So the greenhouse gases produced by food waste in the UK is equivalent to 10 million cars on the road. So a problem really worth tackling. Hellmann's has been talking around about reducing food waste for the last 2 years, and it's an ongoing commitment, so one that we're fully committed to. If you think about Hellmann's, it's a brand that evokes a high degree of trust, and it's found in every second household up and down the country. So, it's really well positioned to play a bigger role in people's lives. And when you think about the fridge being the epicenter of food waste, and the most wasted ingredients are things like bread, tomato, chicken, potatoes, pasta, they're perfectly paired with Hellmann's. They can be transformed into delicious salads and sandwiches, which are our top dishes. So there's a very natural product fit and a clear role for Hellmann's.
Yeah, as you were speaking, it's your ongoing commitment, which I find so refreshing in this. So, it's rare for brands to continue to work on that single-minded purpose that they've identified in the world, and to see that through the work I think it's what makes this campaign such a great campaign. Now, for you, Becky, this campaign is an excellent example of Action 5 of Ad Net Zero. And a key challenge I keep hearing in the work that I do with Change Brief Alliance members is how do you make sure that you enable behaviour change in a way that's entertaining and engaging and relevant? What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think, as Rachel said, working with Channel 4 and BBC Studios, I think particularly on this project, we all learn a lot from them. They are, as you quite rightly said, experts in entertainment, and nothing is going on at 8 p.m. on a Monday night unless it's entertaining and very watchable. Obviously, they kept us in check in some ways. They kept us honest. They kept us realistic. We were really single-minded around our food waste message. We wanted to talk about the impact, raise awareness, and help people to change their habits. But they were very clear that unless we only wanted to talk to, people who were already kind of on that journey, we needed to add a lot more to the format for that. Real families have other priorities, reducing their grocery bills, for example. just getting their kids down at the table to eat something, anything.
Yeah, empathize with that.
So they really guided us with that. And, I'm not sure whether Rachel would agree, but at times it was, there were some tricky conversations because we felt that maybe our message was being slightly diluted, but actually, of course, they were right. And, together we created a format that was really interesting and varied, but then very balanced as well, and did land the food waste issue. And I think importantly showed that it's actually quite easy to do and not a compromise really. All of our families reduced their food waste and ate delicious food throughout the whole time that they were doing the experiment. So I think I learned a lot from them around drawing people in perhaps slightly different ways to make it more appealing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Becky. For you, Rachel, so Unilever, of course, have been leading the way in sustainability for many, many years, and there's established purpose around making sustainable living commonplace. From your perspective, how do brands become more sustainable?
Well, that's a huge question, and I'm not an expert, but I can talk to what Hellmann's are doing.
Yeah.
So firstly, on our packaging side, we're making sure all our packaging is 100% recyclable, and we're also on a journey to move all our plastic bottles to 100% PCR. We're 40% of the way there, and early next year we'll be at 100%. So then our full portfolio will be 100% recyclable and recycled. Secondly, we try to be really consistent in how we communicate reducing food waste. As an example, when we launched new flavors last year, new flavored mayonnaise, we encouraged people to dip their pizza crusts in them, because believe it or not, 1 in 5 people don't eat their pizza crusts, and that's a lot of wastage. So again, that consistency.
Yeah.
And also, of course, we also try to make sure our house is in good order, so we're constantly looking at ways where we can reduce business waste in our own operations.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I love that pizza slice example. It's just, again, another, as you say, signal of your ongoing commitment to how might you reduce food waste in your audience, how might you use the power of your brand to shift behaviour. It's a really nice example of doing that. So Becky at Mindshare, you work across many, many brands, many different accounts. So I'd love your perspective on what power do you see agencies that work with brands have to create positive impact and become more sustainable.
I find the easiest way is to kind of break it down into the categories that are part of the Change the Brief Alliance, a part of that foundation. So the first one is change the image. I'm sure there's been lots of chat about that. It's the easiest possible thing to do. Let's just do everything we can in the work that we show to normalise sustainable living, whether that's showing sustainable transport, more than one person in a car and so on. It's fairly straightforward and a simple thing to do. Second is change behaviour, which obviously is something that we've been trying to do with Cook Clever Wasteless, and Rachel is doing on an ongoing basis with Hellmann's. But we're not the only examples out there. Some of my favourites, the recent eBay and Love Island initiative, where they really made pre-loved clothes desirable and brilliant, because it was really surprising for a property like Love Island. And then another great example is from another one of our clients, which is M&S, who changed the labels in their children's clothes. So rather than putting space for one name in the back of the label, they put child 1, child 2, and child 3, which is just such a beautifully simple way to say not only our clothes last, but actually we expect you to hand this on, and that's perfectly normal behaviour. And then the last is change the business, which is obviously moving to a more circular model. I think if you're in agency land, you might feel like you don't necessarily have the opportunity to have so much impact on that, depending on your role. But we still have a role to play. So if a business is changing, so for example, let's say Selfridges moving to 50% rental, reuse, and so on, we have a really important role in that. So first of all, we need to make that lifestyle aspirational as well, as we do with others. But there'll be a lot of consumer experience stuff that goes behind that. How do I rent? How do I return? And there'll be a lot of lateral thinking and innovation needed in those. So even in that kind of bigger picture one, I think we have a really important role to play. So yeah, I think if we take image, behaviour, and business and break it down like that, I think most people in the industry can affect at least one of those things.
Sure, yeah, definitely. You saying that reminds me of the speaker from Cannes Lion yesterday talking about how the role of advertising can play in making IKEA more circular. Yeah. How can we encourage us to, how do we deconstruct our Billy bookcase and take it back to the store? So that's a really nice example of helping businesses in their shifting their business models. I'm asking you all the tricky questions, Becky. So in the campaign, there's a clear link between food waste and Hellmann. It's really clear and easy to understand that link. But what do you do when you're working with brands when it's tricky to make a connection and you're trying to enable sustainable behaviour? What do you do?
Yeah, that is a difficult question. I hope I'm not swerving it by saying I don't kind of think of it in that way now. We used to, so when we first started working with Change the Brief, the way that it would work is that we would do what we deemed our normal response to a brief, and then we would respond to the future brief, which was a kind of a bolt-on, if you want the sustainable version bit that went on the end. And sometimes that worked, and it was worthwhile doing because it made people start thinking about it. But it also meant that sometimes those connections were a bit fake, not very genuine. So I think we've now moved to a position where it's more of our culture within the agency. So it would be unusual, I think, when we're working for people to come for responses that don't have some element of encouraging sustainable lifestyles. I think everyone feels very comfortable in responding in that way when we're talking about ideas, even if the brief doesn't necessarily specify it. And equally, I think everyone feels very comfortable challenging if an idea comes back that doesn't really feel as responsible as it should be. So I think we've built it more into our general way of working, which means the more that we do it, the more that we don't have to kind of search really hard for those connections, because it's just part of the way we work. So what was the future brief? It's just the brief, now, I think. Yeah. And if that is a little bit woolly, I think, education and inspiration really helps. So, Change the Brief Alliance has got just the most amazing set of resources that are available. So if you really are stuck for a way in, there is lots of stuff out there, including your resources, which are really useful. So, sign up for Change the Brief Alliance, everyone.
Yeah, I remember at Mindshare, when we first started with Change the Brief, it was almost quite apologetic. It was almost like one extra slide at the back of the deck.
Do you mind if we show you?
Do you mind if we just have a conversation about sustainability?
Yeah.
And often it was, yes, okay, we'll listen, and that was it. But sometimes it just provoked a really genuine conversation about, maybe I need to shift the conversation and change the brief. Yeah. But it's also fascinating how the conversation has moved on so quickly in 2 years from that almost apologetic response thing to actually, as you say, working with your clients on embedding the work and making sustainable behaviour as part of the brief in the first place. So rapid, I guess it's a nice signal and evidence of the rapid level of transformation that's going on in the industry. But talking about relationships between agencies and clients in this space, Rachel, brands want to make a positive impact. This is really clear. Unilever clearly leading in this space for a while now. And it's clear from the growth of Change the Brief Alliance, increasing number of agencies wanting to step forward and be part of that and create work that makes a difference. But from a client perspective, how should agencies engage with you and work with you to create this kind of work?
Well, Unilever's principles of marketing are, get real, do good, and be unmissable. And get real is really understanding and knowing the consumer intimately. And a good example in this campaign is really kind of understanding the messaging around saving money versus saving the planet, and what will resonate best with the consumer. Do good is about what we are doing other than just advertising. So again, in the case of Hellmann's, it's the partnerships we make with Olio and Fair Share, and how we help redistribute food more fairly. And then be unmissable is about creating standout creatives that really disrupt and are memorable. So we need agencies to lean into the three areas and really come up with them with activities and communications that do stand out in culture. And I think it's welcoming the big, bold, radical ideas as well, and it's giving them room to grow, because often, you get an idea, you kind of think that's just too out there, but it's kind of stripping it back and giving it time, to grow and to morph into something that will work as well. So we need to be a bit more accepting of kind of things left field, I think, as
Great.
well.
So it's okay for a junior strategist to come to you with a big, bold,
Yeah.
crazy idea on how we can, reduce it.
Would welcome it, yeah.
You'd welcome it
Yeah.
as part of the work. Fantastic. I've got one more question for you, Becky. Actually, it's something that's been talked about a little bit before. There's a brilliant talk from the folk at Google and Ipsos, I think, speaks to this idea as well. But in relation to climate change, we've seen consumer attitudes change. A lot of it due to the fact that we're feeling the presence of climate change in the UK in our lives. But have you seen this change through the research that you do at Mindshare, and what does it mean for brands?
Yeah, I mean, our research team they're just about to launch a report called Finding Good. So they've been looking at this a lot recently. So talking to them about it, I think that what they've seen is that a care for protecting the environment is much more widespread now than it was. Most people are making some sort of change in their lifestyle. That's been led by an older generation during COVID, actually kind of reflecting a bit more and changing their lifestyle. Younger and older tackle it in slightly different ways. So younger audiences, I guess it's probably no surprise, a little bit more political about it. They might make more major lifestyle changes like plant-based diets and so on.
Yeah.
The older generation look more at smaller but multiple changes like buying less and recycling and so on. Cost of living crisis is coming through really strongly now. So I think if you speak to people, they will say, oh, that's more of a priority for me. But that also means behaviour change. So, in the past, I might have reduced my food waste because I wanted to from the environment. Now I might reduce my food waste because it's a necessity, because it brings my grocery bill down. But the outcome is the same. So I think we could really play a role in helping people to make that connection between those actions. Not everybody is making that connection, and kind of really embedding them and accelerating them, because I think we can make people feel really good about those changes. And as you say, show that they are part of a better life.
Yeah.
And just become more relevant to people who are making those changes.
Brilliant. Yeah, that living differently, living sustainably is not a compromise. It often leads to better quality of life.
Yeah.
I think it was Christina Figueres who said that, the architect of the Paris Agreement. Gosh, we're out of time now, so we've got time for one last question. If there's one single message you want to leave the audience with before we all go to lunch, what would it be? Rachel, to you.
I think it would be really clear and consistent in your messaging. So with Hellmann's, it's all about make taste, not waste. And that kind of clarity coupled with great marketing and great partnerships, I think can really inspire people to change their behaviour.
Fantastic. Becky, what's your message to the audience here and watching online?
I think I would say, we are problem solvers at heart as part of our jobs. And I think this challenge isn't really any different to any other brief. Our industry has played a huge part in making our current lifestyles desirable and aspirational. So if we really want to, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do the same thing for a sustainable lifestyle.
Super, thank you. I want to thank you both for your contributions, and I think that's a clear call. So wherever you sit in the industry, a media agency, media owner or advertiser, what will you do to promote sustainable behaviours through the work we put out in the world? Thank you.